Welcome back to the Weekly Chat, everyone. The final season of The Umbrella Academy just aired on Netflix, and I watched the entire thing in one sitting. I couldn't help myself. I'm going to talk about it, okay? That's what this Weekly Chat is about, is talking about what I want to talk about. And, in fact, I'm going to be talking about how I actually wasn't all that impressed by it. I'm really sorry to say it. The Umbrella Academy has been one of my favorite series to date. Seasons 1 through 3, phenomenal. I had no complaints about any of them, but out the gate, I found myself to be worried with the state of Season 4 when I saw that they had reduced it from its standard episode count of, I want to say 10? I think it was around 10 episodes, to 6. 6 episodes to wrap up the whole thing. Are you kidding me? Okay, have we not learned that this is not a good format to do stuff with, as crunched up and how condensed things like Netflix, not Netflix, oh my goodness, Disney Plus, like Marvel shows and stuff have been, where 6 episodes just doesn't tell the tale. It doesn't do it right. And I am so sad to say that ended up being the case with this. There will be some spoilers ahead. I don't plan on divulging every single detail of the season by any means. I promise I'm not going to do that, but I probably will have to get into some of what happened in the season in order to discuss the gripes that I have with it. I'm also not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to the Umbrella Academy. I don't know all the extended lore. I don't know all that happens in the comics that it's based off of. But I do know one thing, and I wish I had known before I got into the final season that this was the case, but apparently this has the same thing going on with it that Game of Thrones had. You know what I'm talking about? Where the story actually isn't done yet for the comic. It's still ongoing. And so they probably had to go off the course, at least to a degree, in order to make this season. However, in their defense, they had to do that with the last season as well. Apparently, most of season 3 is of stuff that's still in development with the comics too. So I can't necessarily say that is the sole reason, but after watching Game of Thrones, I do say that I am cautious when it comes to things like that. If the story isn't done yet, I don't know if I really want a series on it. You know what? I am going to have to get into a bit of a spoiler gripe in order to discuss one of my biggest complaints, because this tends to happen. It seems like it happens a lot. When they condense things like this down to 6 episodes, the story's shorter, obviously. If we had 10 episodes before, and now we have 6, 4 less episodes, that's 40% less time to tell the story. So what should you do? Obviously, create a forced love triangle. Absolutely brilliant. I don't like dynamics like that in the show. There's already been situations like that have been addressed and, I thought closed up pretty neatly. I mean, frankly, the whole Luther and Allison thing was done to death, okay? And they closed it out. I thought that it was fine. That's whatever. I don't necessarily think that those hurt plot lines, romance is a thing. It is a component to a lot of stories. I don't have anything against that. But when you're down to the nitty-gritty, and it's the final 6 episodes, because you're only giving it 6 episodes, why introduce something entirely new that has to be dealt with, open and shut, all in one go, along with the story that's already feeling rushed? I'm not a fan. What I'm talking about, of course, is the whole Five and Lila thing that occurred. Okay? I get the subway concept with the multiverse, the different dimensions. There's flies flying around in this freaking car. But I have to say, the bit where they end up stuck for 7 years and form a little bit of a love connection with each other that has to be brought up through multiple episodes and leads to Diego and Five trying to kill each other. Oh my gosh. There's other things to worry about. I really could have done without that. I feel like in that Rush storyline, it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like something like that needed to happen. And that brings me to, honestly, my third gripe. I think I only have 3 gripes. The length, that love triangle bit, and just five in general. they, in my opinion, ruined him. I don't know. Like, the first 3 seasons, the dude was a go-getter. He was the tip of the top, the cream of the crop. He was freaking great. 5 was a character that I resonated to from just his hyperintelligence trying to take over situations. Not saying that I necessarily do that. I don't by any means do that, but I respect it. I like it. I see that and I'm like, oh yes. That's pretty cool. All the way to his coffee addiction. Now that I understand. I respect a man, or at least a 60-year-old man in a pre-teen's body at the start of the series. I respect one's coffee addiction, and I too relate to that. And not only he did drink coffee. He had a cup of coffee. I don't know if he drank the coffee, but sorry. Now I'm getting off track here. He's not like this at all. Okay? I mean, heck, at the start of this season, you realize he's in the CIA. Dude's just straight up in the CIA. Great. Obviously, the most accomplished one of them all, aside from possibly Allison, who is still just an actress, not just an actress, but an actress, as she was. She is now still an actress, but 5. Dude is like, I don't know, in the body of a 20-year-old and in the CIA. Like, it's impressive, but you just don't see much of anything with him. Heck, when it comes to the whole subway thing, he's not even the one that figures out all of it. Like, a lot of it is just stuff that kind of falls into place or Lila figures out. It's not something, he's not the problem solver. He throws together a solution to the problem that shows up throughout this season and goes ahead and tries to wrap things up in a neat bow in the last 15 minutes, but 16 minutes before the end of the show, he had no idea what was going on. And then it just like clicked in his head, like out of nowhere. There was no thought process really to it that builds up. It's just, I don't know. It just didn't feel deserved. It felt rushed, obviously, but 5 in general just seemed like he was really dumbed down. I did not like 5 in this season, and that honestly is the most disappointing thing to me. Honestly, I do have one more gripe. The more I'm sitting here thinking about it, the more complaints that I have. I promise you, overall, I did still enjoy it, but it fell so short compared to what I was hoping for. The whole 6-episode thing out the gate just killed it for me. I tried to keep high expectations. I tried not to let that get to me, but I just felt like there were going to be some things. I tried to keep an open mind, but speaking of it being 6 episodes and, being rushed, because it was so rushed, they didn't have a lot of room for fight scenes, okay? And the Umbrella Academy is notorious for just having really out there, just out-of-pocket, fun fight scenes. Great music playing, unorthodox music that you wouldn't necessarily think would show up. Like, straight up, I've seen on Spotify, just searching through playlists and things like that, playlists dedicated to songs that they suspect would be in an Umbrella Academy fighting scene. Because that's just what it is. And this season had almost no fighting scenes, and the few ones that it did, I thought were just not great. The one that comes to mind for me is one with Luther and Diego fighting together, side by side, and they yell at the end of it, "They're back!" But like half of the fighting scene was slowed down, like not just like regular slow-mo, but like that super slow-mo where for a brief second, it's like you're in Fallout 4 VAT systems, just, firing up the vats and things are in slow motion. They're moving, but barely. And that was half of the fighting scene. And in that fighting scene, they barely used their own abilities. Diego, once or twice, threw an item, with his precision throwing capabilities. And Luther, I don't know, I mean, he utilized his strength once or twice. It wasn't very much. Compared to the very beginning of the season, when they get their powers back, sorry, that's yet another spoiler, but I mean, they obviously get their powers back. Come on, like, would they go the entire season just being regular people? Come on. But when they do get their powers back, it's a great montage, great song playing, things like that. So right out the gate, I thought that they were going to translate that to some pretty awesome fighting scenes down the road, and they didn't. Like, it didn't happen. There were almost no fighting scenes. Even though it was a shorter story, proportionally, there were still just less fighting scenes. It didn't make any sense to me. The earlier seasons had such great fighting scenes. 5 at the diner, Diego getting his butt kicked by a younger version of his dad. Those fighting scenes were fantastic, each one in their own right. This one it fell short to me. I will say also, this one isn't necessarily a gripe, it's just my personal preference. I'd say that this isn't a reason to hate the show. I did not like the ending. It just wasn't for me. I don't know. To me, it made it feel like everything that I watched up until the end was a waste. And I'm not just talking this season, like the whole thing. It felt like all of it was a waste of time because of the way it ended. I don't like endings like that in general. It doesn't really matter how well you construct it and tell the story leading up to that. If it ends at that, I'm never a big fan. I'm just not. So that's nothing against them, and I'm not going to state what it was. You're going to have to watch it or let someone else spoil that bit for you, but I'm not going to get into that much of a detail. I promise you I would try not to divulge all the info. Hopefully you can still watch to this point without it ruining the season for you if you haven't seen it. But there were some things I did like. Getting back to Luther and Allison, I am glad that they didn't drag on that little love story bit. It doesn't happen this season. They had put that in the past and they left it there. And thank goodness there were no time travel shenanigans that pulled it back this time. Not saying that there wasn't time travel in this. I was making a joke. That's a really bad joke. I do apologize. And in addition to that, there were family issues going on with multiple characters, but it wasn't drug out too badly. When it came to the characters getting their powers back and getting back in the groove of things, I thought that worked out really well. In them coming back together, I'm glad that it wasn't as difficult. Of course, it could have just been because the story was rushed, but I will say I do like the fact that it didn't have to be them fighting tooth and nails to get the team back together. After everything that they've been through, they've had each other's backs. They're no longer like as dysfunctional of a family as they used to be. They are more tight-knit than they used to be. I like that it wasn't an absolute grind to try and get all of them to work together again. They basically jumped right back into it. As soon as one of them was in danger, boom, they were all on the scene. However, I do think that there were a couple of plot issues. Because I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm pretty sure at the end of season 3, they showed both Bens. Like, both Bens exist. And yet, the one doesn't show up unless that was something to do with the subway. Which I guess necessarily wasn't, I don't know. Some of it felt a little wonky. Like, it felt like maybe they were going to go in a different direction. And I guess that they technically did say the story in a way that causes it to not be a plot hole. But at the same time, it feels like they wanted to do something differently and they didn't have the time necessarily to do it. I'm wondering if they were hoping for the full 10 episodes. Again, I think it's 10 episodes. I could be wrong. I should probably look real quick. Yeah, I was right. It's 10 episodes for season 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4 had 6. So I will say as well, other than 5, dang it, 5. Why'd you have to let me down, man? Other than 5, I thought all the other characters were pretty well spot on. I thought they were all great. Really enjoyed Diego and Luther. I enjoyed them all. They were all themselves, and it felt really good to see them again interacting with each other. The dynamic of how different they all are and how they interact with one another was always enjoyable to see. It's just the whole 5 thing really hurt it for me. I will say now, David Cross and Nick Offerman in this season was pretty fun. There were other people that joined in on the cast for this season as well, and they were all interesting. But the bit with the Gene and Gene, Nick Offerman plays one of the Genes. I don't know the actor's name that plays the other Gene, but they are husband and wife, and it's a cult. Surprise, everybody! A cult is involved in this. However, their plot line felt a little stifled too. Like, they seemed like they were the replacement for, what was it, that group that had the hub that was outside of space and time, the one that was trying to keep that stuff in check. What is it, Fanti and Cha-Cha? Fanto? Geesh, I don't even remember the names. It felt like that organization was meant to be the replacement for them as like an overarching bad guy situation that you'd run into at basically every corner. And in some aspects, they landed it. In some aspects, it felt rushed. But I did really enjoy seeing that organization. This reality had them everywhere. And it was really cool to see just how in depth they were. I would have loved to see more of that. I would have loved to see a more satisfying conclusion. And just everything fleshed out a lot more. That's just the biggest gripe that I have. But that's it. Those are my gripes. Those are my compliments. All in all, I did still enjoy it. I don't regret watching it. I don't have that sour taste in my mouth nearly as badly as I did with the end of Game of Thrones. They did a much better job closing up the story, considering that the story isn't done. That being said, I might check out the comics instead, and if I do a rewatch, I might stop at season 3. Not gonna lie. That's probably what it's gonna be, because I watched the show for 5, relate to the dude so hard, and it's seasons 1 through 3, 5 that I relate to. Not this one in season 4. Sorry, that's just my opinion. That's just an opinion. Weekly chat opinion. But anyway, that's the video, everyone. Please leave a like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. Check out this video here. YouTube picked it for you, so I hope you enjoy it.